From a proposed fill and build ban to the Glenn McConnell Parkway to how John Tecklenburg is doing as Charleston's mayor, I sit down exclusively with Charleston City Council member Harry Griffin for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, download my free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Harry J. Griffin, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey Quintin, it's good to see you.
Likewise.
I just want to say before we get started, I just want to thank you for being the kind of person you are in this city. And, you interview everybody. It doesn't matter what party.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they're running for.
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're a candidate or not. It could just be a member of the community. You're fair to everybody.
Sure.
And you've been honored by many, many people lately.
Thank you.
And all of those honors, you deserve every bit of them and more. So thank you for that. And, I couldn't imagine how anybody would not respect and honor the job you do. So I hope all our Charlestonians realize this is the hardest working man in Charleston right here.
Well, thank you. I do my best. I work around the clock.
You sure do.
And I thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Harry J. Griffin, you are a family man, sports fan, music lover, Charleston City Councilman. Who else is Harry Griffin these days?
Well, I am a city councilman, and it's supposed to be a part-time position, but I definitely invest every bit of my efforts into that. I work out at the port for a private warehouser, Neal Brothers, import, export packing worldwide. I get to travel all over the world for that position. I love my neighborhood. I live in Shadow Moss. Been on council for 2 years now, and it's definitely been a challenge. We've had some great moments. We've had some tense moments. I've got a group of people on council that we've gotten a lot accomplished, and I respect all of them. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's happened, but I do respect their commitment to our city. And I know here in the next month, some of these faces may change. But I just want to give a shout out to all the council members and the mayor. Thank you for all of the service that you've given our city. And hopefully I will continue to work with you as my term continues. And just want to thank you again for your hard work for our city, because it takes a lot. It takes a family. It takes a village to run a city. It takes an exuberant amount of people. And we have a great staff. We have great public servants that care. And we're lucky in Charleston to have who we have, because we have a budget of over $200 million. Most of that goes to public service. But as we continue to fight towards ending the flooding and improving traffic, we have to have people in office that care. And definitely this group that we have does. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the elections go here in the fall.
What public services does your district need right now?
Well, we need really two. And these two are far and above anything else I could ever ask for. We need to relieve flooding. We need to make sure that no homes flood out. And we need to make sure that our infrastructure is improved. We have very little infrastructure in District 10. We have Highway 61 and we have Glenn McConnell. When you think about it, you say, oh, well, you have two major roadways. You should be okay. With the amount of traffic that we have and the fact that everybody's going to work at the same time, everybody's going to school at the same time, everybody gets off of work and out of school at the same time, right. We have serious congestion. And when you only have two routes in and out, if one is very busy, people tend to move over to the other. And at that point, you then have a log jam. We've had three of the worst traffic days, I think, in the history of Charleston in the last week. We had an incident on Johns Island. We've had a few incidences on Johns Island this week. We've had some losses of life, and it's just terrible tragedies. But also from that, we've seen the need for more infrastructure. And I don't want to argue about 526 this, 526 that. 526 is moving along slowly, but moving forward. But there's plenty of other infrastructure needs as well. We need a flyover we need a flyover probably at the end of Glenn McConnell that goes all the way out to Somerville. We need another route. We were promised the Glenn McConnell extension, That project is kind of tied up with Long Savannah, but Long Savannah is going back and forth with the Army Corps of Engineers with permitting. We can't tie major infrastructure projects to a development. Now, if we want to have a parkway or something like the main road of a subdivision that might cut through, we would ask the developer for help. But we need our state Department of Transportation to help us out and get these major infrastructure projects done. We're kind of in a stalemate right now, and the widening of Beast Ferry, which isn't set to be finished until 2023, that isn't going to cut it. We need more than that.
The flyover, if you were to implement that or get that in your budget, city budget that is, how much would that cost the taxpayers?
Well, we wouldn't be able to do it in the city budget. We would need the county to push for that. We would probably need half-cent sales tax money to push for that. Our city doesn't actually fund infrastructure projects. We do some, like, for example, Spring Fishburne is a drainage project that has an infrastructure aspect. We're able to get money from the department, the state infrastructure bank, because there is a highway need involved in that project. But in terms of large-scale infrastructure projects, the city really is a secondary piece. The main piece is the county. They control most of our tax base. So we need to have more discussions with our county officials about how they're going to fund projects west of the Ashley. I know Councilmember Brantley Moody and Councilmember Vic Rawl do an amazing job in our area. I speak with them very often, but it takes more than just two, and while their projects are certainly going to be a priority because they're strong voices on county council, there are other needs all over the county, and you see people. You see the representatives in Mount Pleasant pushing for Highway 41, and there's projects North Charleston that Teddy Pryor pushes for, and there are plenty of projects that are needed, but West Ashley has always kind of sat back and said, you know what, do that one first. We're okay. We're not okay anymore. We're struggling. Our quality of life is struggling and hurting because we have the potential of water in our homes. And we could sit on a road for 8 or 9 hours and not move. And that is a big problem.
What is the tax base in your district?
Well, we've got 15,000 strong over in District 10. We're probably going to have close to 150,000 people in this next census, which makes a budget of $225 million. Basically, what we ask our residents to do is their property taxes come back and help our city function. Public safety is our number one budgeted item. It encompasses over 60% of the budget. And really, our citizens only account for about 40% of the money that we use on a yearly budget. So we have to go for outside sources, accommodation and hospitality tax money. We were able to generate, I think last year we generated $30 million there. We constantly have to ask for help in other places. Our budget is at a point where it's very vast. $225 million is a big budget for a small city, and we're considered a small city. But what I don't like is that we have these hidden things in our budget that, for example, I think our executive budget is too high. I don't think we should have $400,000 or $500,000 executives. Mayoral advisors in the budget. I think one person or two people can do that job. We have a turnover of 18% in our city employees. That's far too high. Because when you have a turnover that high, not only are you losing a valuable member who you're also having to retrain somebody. And so you're losing that person plus their experience. And sometimes, you see how important it is with our city services, garbage collection, stormwater, all these other public services we offer. We go out and fill potholes. These are very important tasks, and these guys and girls, they work very, very, very hard. but it's not always an easy job, and our people are trained well, so we have to do whatever we can to keep them.
What is that stormwater manual for District 10?
Well, our stormwater manual has been promised us for a long time now, and it looks like we won't get it until 2020. I don't want to wait. I'm tired of waiting. I think that our residents are tired of waiting. I know they are because I'm asking them. They're tired of waiting. So how do we move forward? How do we move the ball and not just be stuck? And I think the only way to do that is we need to ban, fill, and build. I've asked for that to be put on the agenda for our next meeting. I actually asked our legal department to draft an ordinance, and I was told by our attorney that I needed to slow down because the mayor doesn't necessarily support my endeavor on this one, which is fine. He has an opinion, I have mine. I think it's important that our residents know which council members support a fill and build ban and which ones don't. I think there's a lot of factors that play into this decision.
Okay.
For me, I'm trying to give back to Mother Nature because Mother Nature has been very good to us. We live in a beautiful city. We live in a very diverse city in terms of our landscape. You can be at the beach in 15 minutes or you can be out in the woods. We haven't always respected Mother Nature, especially lately. And when you see truck after truck after truck showing up with dirt to fill in wetlands, that's a major issue. And what do you do? Where does that water go? It doesn't just absorb. It is displaced, and that ends up on somebody else's property. The Dutch Dialogue, they had a 250-page presentation, and they specifically outlined, quit doing fill and build, get rid of it. So from there, from the fact that we need to get back to Mother Nature and not fill in wetlands because of what the results we have seen by doing that, partnered with the Dutch Dialogues, I felt like this is the perfect time to put a ban on fill and build.
Okay, most people know that the mayor brought in the Dutch Dialogues, and they basically said what you said, in fill and build. But then why does the mayor not support your fill and build ban?
I think the mayor is going to want to defer anything that is going to be controversial between now and the election. The election's a month away, and any candidate wants to avoid a tough decision when they're running for office because as soon as they have to make that decision, they may lose some of their supporters. But ultimately, it's not about what happens a month from now. What matters is how is our city going to look 50 years from now? And we need to be making decisions not thinking about today, but thinking about our kids and our grandkids and the future. We also have to make up for the mistakes we've made. We can all agree that we've grown too quick, too much and too fast. And what it's done is it has displaced animals, it's displaced water, and what Charleston was is not what Charleston is. And so, I don't know, maybe he wanted it to be his decision. It's not just about this ordinance specifically. He has basically made it known, and I'm sure he'll say this at council, and if he doesn't, I'll make sure to ask him about it. Anything that a council member wants to bring forward for our legal department to draft an ordinance, he now wants us to come to council as a discussion and try to garner support from the other council members before it's done. That was never the case before. It is the case now. Could it be about the fact that he's got an election coming up in a month, and by doing this, we could not get this ordinance passed before the election? We would now have a discussion on Tuesday, and then we would have a first reading 2 weeks from now. It's a stalling tactic is what it is.
Well, how many support do you have? How many city council members do you have as far as supporting your particular idea?
I think that we have a good number of council members that are in tune with the idea. It would have been nice to see something in front of us, and that's what I try to explain to our staff. When you can look at a document, you can look at a proposal on paper and sort of work it out that way, you're going to go a lot farther than me coming in now, and I'm basically just going to have to speak and try to get people to understand this vision without seeing anything in front of them. Makes it a little bit more difficult. But we have had several discussions in passing, not necessarily an agenda item about stopping fill and build. Now, maybe some council members will want to wait until the new stormwater manual comes out, but I think if they really sit down and listen to their residents, and especially on James Island, Johns Island, and West Ashley, the public outcry for this is vast. The peninsula is a different animal. You know, you're not going to see as much fill dirt on the peninsula. Now, there certainly are instances where it's happened, but your wetlands you're going to have a lot more wetlands west of the Ashley, James Island, and Johns Island. Johns Island is, they're screaming for this thing. And I know my residents are too, because really, if you look at District 10, it was basically a swamp. Shadow moss, you could look at a brochure for shadow moss back in the 70s. They were going to build a marina there. So you have a neighborhood that was going to have a marina. There's no marina there, by the way, now. So they had to find some way to fill that land in, fill that wetland in. The West Ashley Circle, look at the inner part of the circle, it's wet all the time. I couldn't imagine there ever being any building there. But a private landowner owns that property, and he could try to do it. We do have tougher regulations for fill and build in the Church Creek Basin.
Right.
But I don't think it's tough enough. We need to put the price tag back on the developer. The reason why the developer loves fill and build is that it's cheap. It's the cheapest way to fill in wetlands and build on top of them. There are other ways to do it. Raise properties up. Build them high off the ground and have somebody park underneath the house. Okay. There are other ways to do it. In fact, there's several different ways. I'm not an engineer. I don't know every single way that it can be done, but there are other alternatives. They just happen to cost a little bit more. But why is it the city's responsibility to give a break to the developer? They're not giving us anything back in return. They're not building any infrastructure, because if they were, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. We just need to change the narrative. Right now, it looks like we don't care about our residents.
What you talk about that vision? What is the mayor's vision?
There is no vision. There's no vision right now. The mayor put out a sea level rise strategy. He's actually put out 2 of them. But one of the first things that was in the Dutch dialogues is the city needs a plan. So obviously they're not thinking that his plan is enough. We have never actually had a list of priorities and said, here's what we're going to do for the next 10 years. And so we never know when we walk into council what's going to happen. It's going to be something different every time. And I'm not just throwing off on John. I think that, honestly, I've been watching all of these candidates for mayor. And I don't know what the actual direction is for any of them yet. Now, they're still a month away, and people may be building up to this big presentation. I've gone to the debates. I think they're all nice people. I think they all bring something to the table. But, I'm really afraid of 4 more years of John. I really am, because our city is really struggling right now financially. It may look like we're okay, but we have a drainage project, Spring Fishburne, which I mentioned before. $50 million over budget. No idea how to fund Phase 5. No idea.
Well, then, how much money is that coming out of the fund for District 10 going to Spring and Fishburne?
A lot of money, and let me tell you why. Directly, you'd say, oh, no, it isn't. But it is, because we've had to deplete our drainage fund. We had $17 million in the drainage fund. All that money had to go to Spring Fishburne just to fund Phase 4. Phase 5, we still have no idea how we're going to fund it. And here's what the ripple effect of that is. By taking all of the money out of the drainage fund to fund Spring Fishburne, we can now do no new projects off of the peninsula until 2023. 5 years of no new projects because we had to finish Spring Fishburne. Spring Fishburne, if we didn't do Phase 4, it would not be a functioning project at all. It would be something that would be considered unfinished. And at that point, the State Infrastructure Bank could come back to us and say, we want our money back. And they gave us $88 million for this project. So we had to fund phase 4. But what I don't understand is why we're not up in Columbia collectively. We should have every council member and the mayor get in our cars and go up to Columbia, sit down with the State Infrastructure Bank and their board, and speak with our legislators and the governor and say, we need help. Help us, please. Help us find grants. See if we can get an amendment to get more money for Spring Fishburne. Why would the SIB want a project that they've already sunk over $80 million and fail? We're not doing that. We're not meeting with our legislators. We're not getting enough state support. And we're certainly not going out to find new businesses. I would have thought that would be the big priority out of the mayor's office. I figured we would be going out looking for people like Amazon, Google, Boeing, trying to get them to open up offices here locally in Charleston. Instead, they all go to North Charleston. And then on top of that, I would have thought we would have a better relationship with our governor's office and our legislators, but I just don't see it. And when the mayor goes up to Columbia and tells the SIB board that Charleston will help raise the money, we'll have a bake sale, then they know we're not serious. You know, we need to get some seriousness back to this office again.
You talked earlier about the mayoral candidates, and then there's another question I want to ask you as well. Oh, the credit rating. What is that right now for the city of Charleston?
We've got a AAA rating. We've got a great credit rating.
How will that sustain itself in the next 4 years?
I mean, if we allowed the mayor to do some of the projects that he wanted, and when I say that, I mean they wanted to sink more money into the low line and some other projects along like that, it could have hurt our credit rating. Our council is very financially motivated in making sure that we have good credit because we have bonds all the time. We've got we have the affordable housing referendum that's passed, which is $20 million bond, and we've got a recreation bond coming up. These bonds are crucial to getting large-scale projects done. But I just don't know if our mayor is a business person. I think he's very much a social activist, and I think he would be great at running like a nonprofit because he's a good community activist. He likes to do events and play the piano and do things like that. But in terms of being a businessman and making pure business decisions, I don't see it. And let me back that up because I know some people are going to say, I see it in the paper, and people like Roy Willie talk about, oh, you know, you're an attack dog. You always go up to the mayor. And then I had another columnist tell me that I was a puppet for Bill Moody and stuff like that. Crazy things that just are I'm an individualist. And let me tell you, I'm not a puppet to anybody. I didn't have any endorsements when I got elected to city council. The only endorsement I had was of the taxpayers, the people that I represent, my constituents, that I love with all of my heart, and they know that. But let me just tell you how I can see why John is not a business person, but somebody looking to be a friend. You see what happened with Roy Willie. $84,000 paid basically under the table, no contract, no nothing. Just, hey, you're a consultant. You'll work out of the legal department. You'll actually work for me. But I found a loophole in this law right here where I can just pay you, and it won't even, it shows up at the city budget at the end of the year, but it isn't that big a deal because technically council can't do anything to me. You had that situation. And then, next thing you know, the mayor wants to throw a judge of 30 years off the bench to appoint Roy Willie's wife to a judgeship. And now, on Tuesday night, the mayor wants to appoint Jimmy Bailey Jr. to the planning commission. Now we already pushed Gordon Gear out because he was being investigated by the labor board for operating as a realtor without a license, and he's been a very tough commission member. He's been very hard to work with over these past years. We got rid of him. We voted him out, but now he wants to put Jimmy Bailey Jr. on there. Jimmy Bailey Jr., who ran for office against James Lewis and lost, but his father, Jimmy Bailey Sr., is what I would consider a has-been. Or really, honestly, he was a never-was-been. He ran against Joe Riley a bunch of times and lost. I think he was a state rep back in the 70s. But he just hangs around City Hall and bashes people like myself and other council members, doesn't offer any solutions, doesn't help at all, and is using his little bit of pull that he has with John. He's in all his commercials, and he's down helping him campaign to parlay that into getting his son on the planning commission. I mean, I don't see how we can allow this good old boy system to continue to go. I really don't. I don't get it. Actually, to be honest with you, somebody like Jimmy Bailey, I had a lot of respect for growing up because he ran against Joe Riley trying to say he was trying to end the good old boy system. And not saying that Joe practiced that, but old Southern politics, that we've seen in Charleston. It's been that way for years and years and years. And everybody's just kind of, as long as everything was good, nobody questioned it. But the problem is things aren't good right now. We're struggling. The things that Joe could get away with being a mayor for 40 years, John hasn't earned those rights or privileges. He doesn't have the respect or the qualifications or the track record to be able to just put his buddies in the positions. And so then it comes to council, and what do we have to do? We have to vote it down because we can't support that. Just like we wouldn't have supported Roy's wife being a judge. She had no qualifications. Just because she was a lawyer doesn't mean she would be good for being a municipal judge where she's got to rule on criminal acts. It's sad, and it questions me. I question why I got into doing this. It really does, because I got into this thinking local politics. We're not going to have all these outside things going on. We're going to focus on the issues. We're going to help our residents. A local politician has more impact, direct impact on their neighbors than anybody. Because the farther up you go, the more people you represent, and you lose your touch. You no longer can be that direct influence anymore.
How impactful has the mayor been on its citizens?
Well, he's impacted some people because some people like his personality and like how he shows emotion with the crying, and he's a happy-go-lucky guy. And some people say, hey, he's made a couple of mistakes here or there, but hey, we're all human, so we make mistakes. I see this pattern of bad decision making, and to me, it's like a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and I wonder when the bad decisions are going to stop.
Let me ask you this, Roy Willie. How many more questions do you have about this?
No more. I'm done with this situation, to be honest with you, because these guys found a loophole, and they basically said, you know what, Roy, you did a good job helping me get elected. I'm going to give you this position. You're going to be okay, because the legal department doesn't actually have to put things out for bid or have contracts in place. They can just bring somebody in to do some outside work for them. And they got away with it. And I can ask 100 million questions, and I can continue to pound the issue. But the fact of the matter is, they found a loophole, they took the money, and that's $84,000 that we don't have, that we could have spent on a project. What he did and what he didn't do, it was before my time.
Okay.
All I know is, when I ran for office and I got into the runoff,
right, remember that.
I saw emails where he was directing Dean Regal on campaign issues. And the invoice that he turned into the city, apparently, during that time period is no longer there. So basically, he did that work for free, I guess. But like I said, it was before my time. I only know what I saw. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But, if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it probably is a duck, And through deductive reasoning, between the emails that I saw and then the emails that I saw when I did the FOIA request and the invoices I saw, it doesn't all add up.
Now, to be fair, Roy Willie told the Postal Story it was all volunteer work that he did. And I hope to get Mayor Tecklenburg on Quintin's close-up soon so he can talk more about this.
You're not going to get the mayor before the election, I can promise you that, especially not after he watches this. Because when he here's the kind of questions you've asked me. Now, I think they're completely fair questions, but it's much easier to not interview with somebody so that you don't have to actually answer the question. It's unfortunate. I think that our taxpayers deserve to know some of these answers before they go to the polls, but I doubt that you're going to get any answers. And in terms of what Roy said to the Post and Courier about it being voluntary work, if that were the case, then we wouldn't have $84,000 worth of invoices. They said the voluntary work was for the campaign. Let's talk about something else.
Sure. And let me talk to you more about that. Let me get back to the mayoral campaign. You basically went to some of the forums already. Let me ask you a tough question. What's true and what's false coming out of the mouths of most of these mayoral candidates?
I can't stay longer than 30 minutes because it's all false. The ads are false. I mean, I think I saw one ad where somebody said that they helped raise $1 billion for infrastructure. Where's that money at? Where are these projects? Saw another one say, found $60 million for flooding. Where? Where is it? It's easy to throw out these big numbers, but I wish people wouldn't lie and maybe it's not a lie. Let me rephrase that. I wish they wouldn't push out a number like that, where if you actually looked into it more and broke it down, it isn't actually the number that they're saying, but they're being very vague so that they can use that big number. Like, for example, if the mayor said he's found $1 billion for infrastructure, the only way he could even say that would be if he basically found all the money for 526, which we both know that didn't happen. That was a county project. There's no way that you could add up city projects over the last 4 years and come up with anywhere near $1 billion. No way. It's impossible. The debates, I've heard a lot of grandstanding, and I stayed to listen. I listened to all the opening statements and some of the questions that were asked, and I heard the mayor laugh about Cardgate and joke around, and it is what it is. I mean, I don't know if I can work 4 more years with John, so if he's elected for another 4, there's a good chance I won't run again.
2 questions. The business gate, was that a mistake in your mind, or is that something that needs to still be looked at?
It's not a mistake because my intentions were not political at all. They were just based on the fact that I saw something that looked shady, and I thought that it needed to be looked into. The only mistake was allowing us to do it internally. It blew up in our face. Instead of us saying we already have an auditor that we have on salary, and he can look into it. Instead, it became that we spent $50-something thousand, which was a total farce. Never happened. I mean, you can't add up salaries from people that are doing. He would have been paid whether he was counting beans or doing this because he's a salaried employee. He makes that no matter what.
Okay.
That the mistake was doing it internally. Not to mention he's auditing his boss, so who knows, how much pressure. I'm sure a lot that was put on him, and I apologize for that because I should have been more prepared when I called for an audit. To say that we should have done it, we should have hired somebody to do it. I don't think it matters whether or not we continue it right now. Because there's a very good chance we'll have a new mayor in a month. But I think eventually we're going to see some things over John's tenure that we shake our head about. I mean, just in that situation alone, you got the $84,000 from Roy Willie. You've got multiple nonprofits that his wife is associated with where he marked out totals that our staff wanted to give them and increased them by $10 plus thousand. You saw sending friends to France on a business trip, but it was really a vacation. And then the city not getting payment back for it for a year. there's no way I could go into the office and say, hey, my good buddy Quintin, I want to send him to France. So let's go ahead and pay for it. And he'll pay us back in a year. You know, you add all that up with what he did to Miss Wineglass. And to me, that was despicable in every way, shape, or form of the world. He didn't even pay that last payment back until after he got caught. So there's a lot of deceit there. You add all those things up, we're dealing with a guy who either he's ignorant to the law or ignorant to morality, or he has an ego that he feels like he's above it and can get around it. And so far, he's been able to get around it. But I just don't know how, if he continued to practice the way he's practiced, I just don't know how that could fly. And you got to remember, he has not been the most successful businessman, and he worked for the city and did not last that long at the city either. When he was the director of economic development, I believe in the 90s, right. That didn't really work out. He's had plenty of chances, but I just don't think he's the guy.
Would you have been the guy? Would you still be in the race right now?
No, I'm not the guy right now. I dropped out very, early on, really. I never even really was too serious about running. I listened to some people. I did a couple of interviews where I said I was considering it. I raised a little bit of money. But I think I know I'll be ready in 4 years. I know I will be. I plan to run in 4 years. That's my plan.
As mayor?
Yeah. But honestly, it's too early to say, because the next person that gets in the office could do a very great job. And if they do, my motto has always been very simple. I'm never going to run for a position that somebody else is already doing a good job. The only way I'll ever run for something is if somebody is not doing the job that the people that elected them asked them to do. If they've gone off course, if they are taking their own self-interest above the needs of their district or their area, then change is needed. And with the mayor, you've got 6 people that say they can do this job. And who knows, a couple years from now, whoever's in the office, we might say, wow, they're doing a great job. And if that were the case, then I would not run. The only way I'll ever run for office is if somebody's not doing the job that the people that elected them expect them to do. They should exceed expectations. They should be the first one in the office and the last one to leave every day. And they ought to be willing to commit wholeheartedly to this position and do whatever it takes to make our city successful.
Harry Griffin, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Yes, sir.